Today, we're going to discuss the impact of AI on the publishing industry.
We'll be exploring a range of topics, from the potential for AI to replace key roles to the ethical considerations of using AI tools.
And of course, we'll be getting to the big question. Will AI replace publishers, editors, writers, and cover designers? In order to make sure this discussion comes from an informed place, both Tahlia and I have played around with some of the AI tools that are available. Tahlia, what kinds of tools have you used?
AI art generation tools drew me to AI first because my hobby has always been art. And I saw art generators as another tool that I could use to bring my imagination to life. I also use animation software and AI video generations to make the images move.
Right, what about writing tools?
Writing tools. Well, of course, I've used ChatGPT and Copilot, which is Microsoft's version of that, and a specialised writing tool called WriteSonic that writes articles, adverts, social media posts, landing pages, basically what copywriters do or did until now. On top of that, I've used something that's supposed to help with writing and editing, specifically pro writing tools, which is a little bit like Grammarly. What about you? What have you used?
I've mainly been using the AI additions to Photoshop, which I think is technically called Adobe Firefly, but I'm usually just using the tools in there. Bit of Midjourney, and I've had a couple of chats with ChatGPT.
Okay, so what kind of things did you use them for, and what was your feeling about them in terms of how useful they were?
Look, in Photoshop, the tools for extending backgrounds and removing unwanted objects, they're really useful. It's really sped up my workflow for things like that. I've had no luck actually getting Adobe Firefly's image generation tool to make anything useful. It just gets it wrong all the time. But so if I need a specific design element, I'll still find it quicker on a stock site. As for Midjourney, I was pretty resistant to using that to start with, as it felt like cheating. I really hated that you could create such stunning artworks in 2 seconds when I would slave away in Photoshop for hours. What about you? What did you find from using those tools?
Well, I discovered there's a lot of prejudices out there about using AI in a creative way, particularly in art. And that's because the people who created the art generators didn't ask artists if they could use their art that was freely available on the web to train the AI generators. And so they feel that their livelihood is threatened. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about how the AI art generators actually work that feeds into those concerns. And, they are valid concerns.
But we're not going to go into that aspect of it here, are we?
No. For the sake of keeping this discussion on the topic of the publishing industry, we're just going to accept that these tools are here to stay. And the challenge for creative people is whether we will use those tools or not, and if so, how.
So what was your impression of the writing and editing tools?
Well, I was actually surprised at how limited they are in certain areas. And undoubtedly, the AI writing tools have their uses, and they're really good at certain things like writing sales copy, articles, collating research, summary.
Copywriters might disagree.
Oh, no, I know. I mean, it's bad news for copywriters, for sure. They're good for grammatical, spelling and punctuation checks, but they do have major limitations when it comes to fiction writing particularly.
What kind of limitations did you find?
AI has its own sort of voice.
Oh.
After using
beep, bop, 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 like that.
Well, it's very dry. It's okay for informative stuff. Like after using AI to write articles, I can now pick AI generated articles better than I can pick AI generated artwork because they really do sound all the same. I've used AI to give me the outline and do the research for blog posts, but of course I still had to add my personal insights and edit for bias. Because honestly, without your personal human touch, the articles are pretty boring. I mean, they'll give you the information, but of course you have to check the content, because if you don't, you might just be sharing misinformation or perpetuating harmful stereotypes. In one article, for instance, I had to weed out subtle biases that reinforced outdated stereotypes of neurodivergent people. So if you're not on the outlook for that,
you've got to be really careful what you're using it for.
You've got to be really careful. You've really got to check. They just aren't always right.
Yeah. What about stories? Like, did you get a massive plot hole out of a story from ChatGPT?
Yeah, I did. I thought I'd try a short story, see how it came up. But the AI basically didn't really follow my brief. But
they're good at that. Even Midjourney's good at not following the brief.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will get better. But you can't trust AI to do it all for you, because though the written story that it came up with had a certain charm to it, in terms of active, engaging prose, it was pretty much telling instead of showing.
Oh, that's like rule one, don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the AI writers are quite good at non-fiction, but they're not so great for fiction. You know, I mean, the story started with "there was."
Oh, no. That's a big no.
I went, no.
Anything else in terms of the limitations of AI writing software?
Yes, I found writing software that was supposed to make you write better incredibly annoying. It was just so annoying. By the time I set it up to not constantly disturb my workflow with superfluous suggestions, I could have written several thousand words myself.
Wow.
And the app I used gave writing suggestions as you typed, making various suggestions on improvements. And I realised that I didn't need an AI to tell me what I already knew. I can see that it would be useful for someone who's learning, for beginner writers, say at the third draft stage.
Yeah, it would be just really distracting if you were writing a sentence and be like, what about this? What about this? Go away. Yeah, I'm in my zone.
You should never use that sort of thing for your first draft. Yeah. Never, because you'll never develop your own voice.
You'll start sounding like an AI.
Yeah, and you need some confidence in understanding the writing craft to know what is actually a useful suggestion and what really isn't appropriate for what you're writing.
So instead of getting your own writing voice, you'd sort of end up with a mismatch of like AI styles that I don't even know where AI gets its writing style from.
Well, you can set the style of what you're writing so it knows what you're writing, like in terms of you're writing a romance or a thriller, right? But I found that some of the suggestions that it made for a manuscript that I put in to test it were just wrong for the style of the author's voice. If the author had chosen to follow those kinds of suggestions, those suggestions would have stuck out like the proverbial dog's balls, really, as being just not compatible with the rest of the writing. It was obvious that it was applying rules, right, without any understanding of emotional nuance, shall we say. And it clearly couldn't interpret complex narratives or provide any in-depth analysis. I tried using it for critiques, and they either offered like vague sweeping statements or lists of facts about word usage and so on. But
so you mean when you asked it to critique your writing?
Yeah.
You used the word "was" a lot.
Not that so much, but repetitive words and various things.
And? But
you as an author would then have to look at this lists of data and go, well, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah, so not the same as like a editor doing a manuscript appraisal.
No, and it's like for me as an editor, I looked at it and went, well, that's not going to be of any use to an author, not really. And even for me as an editor, by the time I went through and sorted out how I could put this data into a form that would be relevant for an author, I could have read a whole heap of the book and written my own critique, which would be of much more value. So I received this manuscript from a lady who had used Grammarly, which is one of these kinds of writing tools supposed to help you make your writing better and to edit it, right? And she thought that it had to be pretty good because she'd used this tool and she thought it would be ready for publishing, basically.
That's what all the ads for Grammarly say.
That's right. And you know, there was not a grammatical error. There was no punctuation issues. That side of it was very clean, right? But as I read through, it was like, that's a weird thing. It's like things just jumped out as being they didn't fit. Now that I've used one of these things, I can see what's happened. She's used a suggested rewrite, and she's used it thinking it was better, and it doesn't fit with
the style.
With the style,
Yeah.
it doesn't fit with what she's saying. You know, it was like that all the way through, and it was just sort of weird. You know, it just sort of didn't work, and also the kind of main sense of the story was not clear. The thematic elements weren't brought out. So, I mean, there was just so much there. And I just went, you can't not have a human editor.
There's a lot of things, like in editing especially, there's a lot of things to think about. Like you're going from like, you know, the structure, the world building, the plot holes, and then all the way down into like sentence structure and grammar and punctuation and stuff. And it's like,
there's so much.
In order to build an AI that could do all of that, taking into account the human emotion aspect of it.
I honestly don't think that there's any way that an AI could handle the sheer volume of different parameters with often very subtle nuances that editors work with when editing. I mean, yes, AI can help with grammar, spelling and punctuation, but even that can be unhelpful if you can't program in the style guide that you're using.
Because it's different across America, US, Australia.
It's like Microsoft Word, right? If you are using the Chicago Manual of Style as your style, which most fiction authors in America use, Microsoft spell check, and not their spell check, but their grammar check, their punctuation, it's not correct in terms of that style guide, right? So, you know, there's just too many factors that come into each editorial decision. And though an AI can, for instance, identify emotional words, right, it can't determine the effect that that word would have on a human reader in that particular context. Now it's your turn. Do you think cover designers should use AI tools? And if so, how?
Look, in Photoshop, the AI extend, remove background tools, they've all been there for a while. So like designers love the time-saving applications of that. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a Photoshop user who isn't using those integrated tools. I'd love to hear from anyone who's gotten the Firefly image generator to work properly, because I have not found it very helpful. I asked it to generate footsteps the other day in sand, and it just gave me like a giant Buddha foot, which was like way bigger than the person's feet were this big, and then the foot was just one giant foot.
And the thing about Firefly is that it was trained only on Adobe stock images. So there's no ethical concerns about it being trained on uncopyrighted images. That's the thing. That's the selling point of Adobe Firefly, if you like. But it's incredibly limited.
Yeah.
You know, like if you wanted a fantasy image, like I work with in Midjourney, you can't. You just can't, because they haven't trained it on that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is better for generating more photorealistic things, but then even then it's very
I have
not figured out the prompts to make it work.
What about Midjourney?
Yeah, I still feel uncomfortable using Midjourney for cover design. But then I had an author request an extremely specific image of a person for their front cover, and I simply could not find a stock image that fitted that. So you convinced me to use Midjourney to generate just the figure, and then I was able to integrate that into the cover design as an element, as if it was a stock image.
Well, that's where it's really useful though, isn't it? It's like if an author wants a specific look to their character, you really can't get that with a stock image. You'd have to get a model and photograph that, and that's pretty much impossible in our situation.
Yeah, and you know, I do use stock images, so at a certain point you've reached the limit of what stock images are actually out there. So it does help in that aspect. I always make sure I tell the author if their request is getting so specific that we need to go in that direction though.
Yeah, but also authors who are concerned about using stock images because, you know, someone else might use that image. When you use an AI generator, you've got a unique image.
That's
so
true.
It's in that respect, it's even better, right?
Because on the other end of the spectrum, there are authors that are like, I don't want to use any stock images because
someone else
could have used it.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, so it's beneficial in...
I always make sure the author is okay with me using it if it becomes necessary. I only go for it when it's a really specific imagery request from the author, or, you know, they've or I just simply can't find a stock image that looks like what we want.
So do you think authors will be able to make effective covers with AI that bypass the need for a cover designer?
I think there would need to be a specific tool built for that. So as I said, I haven't got Midjourney to spit out an image that doesn't need some editing afterwards. So you'd still need some degree of fixing up ability. And then you'd also have to be a really skilled prompter to get exactly what you want. And then there's things like if you've got a series, you need the same character on all the covers. But the main problem at the moment is typography. Again, there'll probably be an image generator that comes out that
is specifically for
covers or specifically for typography. But at the moment, Midjourney at least cannot handle adding text to images. So
very well, no.
Yeah.
It's like with editing, there's a lot of decisions that a cover designer makes that draws in a whole lot of different stuff into that decision.
Yeah, it's the symbolism, it's the colours, it's the font choice, it's the placement, all that sort of stuff. At the moment, an author would need to be able to do some image editing themselves, understand typography and font choice and composition of those elements, colour symbolism, all of that kind of stuff. So you'd need a bit of technical skills yourself. That being said, I do live in fear that an AI book cover generator will come out and I'll be totally out of a job. So what can you do? Considering what you said about their limitations, should writers and editors use AI tools, and if so, how can they be used effectively?
Well, I think that's, of course, entirely up to the individual, but I do think that writers, editors and cover designers can use AI tools to assist in their work without giving the whole job to AI. And it would not be advisable for them to give the whole job to AI.
Definitely not right now.
So for writers, AI can help generate ideas, outline plots, or assist in writing drafts. Editors can use AI for grammar checks, style suggestions, and consistency. For instance, for several years now, I've used something called Perfect It, which catches inconsistencies in manuscripts I'm editing. It tells me if I've spelled or capitalised the same word differently in different situations.
Oh, that's helpful.
It's really helpful, and it makes me a better editor, right? So I would never not use that tool now. But it's not doing the whole job. It's just a tool that I use for a specific purpose.
Yeah,
and
just use it to fill the bits that humans can't do.
To do the bits that AI does well.
Yeah, the computery bits. So as ChatGPT said when we asked us, these tools can save time and provide new perspectives, but they should complement rather than replace human judgment and creativity.
Yes, and I analysed what it said and decided whether that was true or not, and I think it is true.
So with these tools available, should writers expect that they won't need editors and cover designers in the future?
I'm going to let ChatGPT answer this one.
Oh, you have to do it in a ChatGPT voice.
Okay. So in response to this question, it said, while AI can assist in the creation process, the expertise of editors and cover designers remains invaluable. Editors bring a deep understanding of narrative structure, pacing, character development, which AI cannot fully replicate. Similarly, cover designers have an artistic intuition and market knowledge that AI generators may lack. Therefore, the role of these professionals can continue to be essential. Do you agree?
Yeah, actually, I think ChatGPT put that really well.
That's why I decided to quote.
Yeah.
And also, because we're talking about AI, I thought, AI should have a say. It should have a say, yeah.
But yeah, AI can be very useful for summarising information. So considering the ethical implications, how should AI be used ethically in the publishing industry?
Well, I mean, first of all, we need to be transparent about our use of AI and respect the intellectual property of others. So, for instance, when using AI to generate content or designs, it's important to disclose the AI involvement to avoid misleading your consumers.
That's right. And we also need to respect copyright laws and avoid using AI to plagiarise artistic works. That means not asking an AI to create something that's specifically in the style of another writer or artist.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of creating a Brett Whiteley painting if you're not Brett Whiteley. I mean, to me, I would rather be working on creating my own style. And you can do that with an art generator. You can work to create your own style. And in terms of writing, I'd never use an AI article writer for a topic I haven't researched myself.
Yeah.
And I always ask for references that I can check. So, you know, this is part of ethical. You know, you've got to check, edit, add your personal perspective, because basically your personal human perspective is what other humans really want to read about. But, you know, in the end, it's crucial to use the AI tools as aids rather than replacements for human creativity.
Yeah, I mean, the human creativity is what we all like doing, right? So we don't want the AI to replace that. They can do the dishes while I do the creating.
Yeah, that's what we want.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the big question, do you think AI can ever replace humans in writing and editing?
No, not a chance. It just lacks and will always lack the ability to fully appreciate human sensibilities, particularly in areas requiring emotional depth and empathy. Writing and editing involve understanding subtle emotional cues, cultural nuances, ethical considerations, which AI cannot fully grasp. The multitude of variations that the author and the editor juggle, such as tone, pacing, and character development, requires a level of intuition and experience that AI currently lacks. And probably will always lack. It's that human experience, right? You know, it just can't fully replace the nuanced contributions of human professionals.
And I think it's the same for cover designers. There's much more to an effective cover than just a pretty picture and well-placed text. Authors who will try to do without us probably would have never employed us in the first place. And everyone's got a budget. And readers might not want to read a novel written by AI. I know there's definitely some people on Bookstagram that are very no AI at all. Unless it's like written by an AI from an AI perspective about an AI, that could be interesting.
And the publishers themselves don't need to worry because the sheer variety of tasks involved and the nature of them just isn't something an AI could do in its entirety.
Yeah. Hey, ChatGPT, publish book.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
I mean, I think in general, AI is a powerful tool that can be used to help or to harm. And it's the human user who determines how it's used. In all areas, it should be viewed as a tool to complement rather than replace human experience. And I think that AI and human professionals can work together to create compelling content and designs, but that human element will also always be paramount. And I think it'll become even more important to authors and readers. That human element will become even more important.
Yeah. So with Alkira Publishing, you will always be talking to a real human being. These two human beings right here. Would you want to read a novel written by an AI? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thought-provoking, entertaining, and educational content.
Bye!